Today we're chatting with Suzanne Woods Fisher, who's the author of On a Coastal Breeze. Welcome to the program, Suzanne.
Thank you, Martin. It's good to be here.
I was reading over the book. I must admit, I haven't been at our warehouse due to isolation, so I was reading over the notes on the book. And my first question that comes to mind, besides the beautiful cover, is how important is setting for you when it comes to putting together a book?
I think setting becomes one of the characters of the book. So in a book like this Three Sisters Island series, and this is book 2, On a Coastal Breeze, it's set off the coast of Maine, off the coast of Maine. So it's an island off the coast of Maine, and there are 3,000 little islands off the coast of Maine. And because of that, it's extremely remote, hard to get to. And there's all kinds of problems that come. People are there for a reason. They don't want to be interacting with the mainland. They view things differently, such as a piece of something you might consider junk. They might consider, no, I can use that because someone carted it all the way to the island. Wi-Fi is non-existent. Electricity is erratic. They have to do their laundry at 10 at night, that kind of thing. So it becomes part of the story. And I think that's, especially in a book like this, it's a critical part. It's definitely one of the characters, has a big say-so.
And do you go to a place like Maine or have been to Maine where you're like, okay, this is a great setting for a book series?
It is a great setting for a lot of reasons. It's partly one of the things that I love about Maine that's a little different than some of the other, if you're looking at coastal cities or coastal destinations. Maine is very approachable, accessible for everybody. When I was, and I've been there a number of times, my dad even went to college up at Bowdoin, and it has a sense that people of all walks of life are there. It doesn't feel quite like Nantucket, which I had done another series set in, that again isolated in a very well-to-do setting. It is not for those who are watching their pennies. Maine has an ability to attract everybody, and I think that's one of the reasons it makes sense to have this story there. It's something for everybody in it.
Right. Well, it allows you to bring in some characters that you might not see under a different set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular story, you literally have someone dropping in on Madison. Madison is a family therapist, and somebody from her past, Ricky, literally drops in. And there's some conflict from the past, but he's now a pastor, and this causes some tension. How much research do you go through to discover what a family therapist was like, what panic attacks are like, what it's like for somebody who becomes a pastor, who in the past may not have been the nicest person sometimes, but is now a pastor? How much research goes into developing those characters? Do you talk to people in those fields?
Well, here's the fun part of being a writer. Everybody you get to know feels nervous because somehow they will end up in a story. Different names, different circumstances. But for example, in my small group, one of my favorite friends is a family and marriage therapist. And so I was able to tap her for a lot of this.
Right.
And another friend struggles from panic attacks quite a bit. And then another person is a reformed juvenile delinquent, now a pastor. So they all kind of drop in. But where I stopped was the skydiving. I actually did interview, my son has skydived, didn't tell me until after it was over, which I'm so glad. Yeah. And then another author, Susan May Warren, who's so fun, she has done skydiving too. So we were at a dinner and I just kind of drilled her on everything. And I really thought, do I want to do this? Because the story begins and ends, kind of bookends with the skydiving. And I couldn't do it. I thought I would worry the whole time about that landing.
That would be a whole nother book, is your experience skydiving. Yeah, a lot of tension there. Yeah. How much of you sometimes appears in the characters? Or do you try to keep yourself as far away from that as possible?
Well, it's such a good question, because how could you not be a part of everybody? And yet I'm also writing from a male's point of view. For example, there's the basic story, really briefly, is a widowed father in his late 50s who has three daughters, young adults, who are growing increasingly estranged. And he just feels there's something he needs to do to pull everybody back together. So he remembers his most favorite place in all the world was this camp off the coast of Maine. He happens to realize it's up for sale. It's nearly bankrupt. And on a whim, he buys it. His daughters think he's got dementia. But there's a funny thing about an island. It just changes you. And little by little in story one, the family kind of regroups and recalibrates. Story two now is the middle daughter kind of takes center stage, and her story is told, but all the sisters still play a role. But I'm also speaking through the father's point of view, and I'm his age, so I'm understanding, what is it like to suddenly be at a new stage of life where a career is changing. He had been a radio announcer and he had a case of laryngitis that never left him, which, there went a radio career without a voice. So he's having to figure out what his life look like now. And so you're kind of in his mind, you're in the daughter's mind. But I think it's kind of hard to not be a part of them. And yet at the same time, these characters, at least the way I write, there's a point when they go from like a flat one-dimensional person to suddenly 3D, and then they're taking over a little bit. And so I don't know if that's me or imagination, or just even I pray before I write every day, whether that's the Holy Spirit just filling your mind kind of with fresh wind and new insights.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Suzanne, to talk about On a Coastal Breeze. And please do take care during isolation. We appreciate your time very much.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.